Yellowstone National Park. Long before Wyoming became a state, this land was already sitting on top of one of the most powerful volcanic systems on Earth. In 1872, Congress set aside more than 2 million acres here, making it the first national park not just in America, but in the entire world. Beneath the surface, a shallow pocket of magma heats the groundwater until it has nowhere left to go, and the result is a landscape that hisses, bubbles, and erupts on a schedule. Old Faithful has kept its rhythm for well over a century, sending a column of boiling water into the sky every 90 minutes or so, while thousands of other geothermal features simmer quietly nearby. Wolves vanished from this ecosystem in the 1920s, only to be brought back in 1995, and their return reshaped rivers, forests, and elk populations in ways scientists are still studying today. What began as an experiment in setting land aside simply because it was extraordinary became the blueprint that more than 100 countries would eventually follow. Grand Canyon National Park. The Colorado River has been cutting through northern Arizona for somewhere between 5 and 6 million years, and the result is a gorge so vast that a person standing on one rim often cannot see clearly to the other. Some of the exposed rock at the bottom of the canyon is nearly 2 billion years old, meaning visitors looking down are essentially staring into the deep history of the planet itself. 11 Native American tribes maintain cultural and historical ties to this canyon, and their connection to the land stretches back thousands of years before the first geologists ever arrived to study its layers. President Theodore Roosevelt visited in 1903 and was so struck by what he saw that he urged Americans to leave it exactly as it was, calling it a great sight every citizen should see. The canyon stretches 277 miles long and, in places, plunges more than a mile deep, a scale that photographs rarely manage to capture honestly. Few landscapes on Earth make time itself feel visible the way this one does. Yosemite National Park. Nestled in California's Sierra Nevada, this park owes its dramatic look to glaciers that carved through solid granite over millions of years, leaving behind sheer cliffs like El Capitan and Half Dome. Naturalist John Muir spent years wandering these valleys, and his writing about Yosemite helped convince President Abraham Lincoln to sign a bill in 1864 protecting the land, decades before the National Park Service even existed. Yosemite Falls drops nearly 2,425 feet in three-tiered sections, making it one of the tallest waterfalls in North America, and in springtime the roar of the water can be heard from miles away. Giant sequoias grow in 3 separate groves within the park, some of them over 2,000 years old, having stood through the entire span of recorded American history and beyond. Muir's advocacy here didn't just save one valley, it helped plant the very idea that wild places deserved federal protection. Great Smoky Mountains National Park. Straddling the border of Tennessee and North Carolina, this park draws more visitors each year than any other national park in the country, and it does so without ever charging an entrance fee. The Cherokee people lived among these mountains long before European settlers arrived, and their descendants remain closely connected to the Qualla boundary just outside the park's edge today. Mist frequently rises from the dense forest canopy, giving the mountains their name and their almost dreamlike appearance at dawn. Scientists estimate the park holds close to 19,000 documented species, with new ones still being discovered, making it one of the most biologically diverse places in the entire temperate world. Unlike the dramatic peaks out west, the Smokies are ancient and worn smooth by roughly 200 million years of erosion, quietly proving that a mountain range doesn't need sharp edges to leave a lasting impression. Zion National Park. Deep in southern Utah, the Virgin River has spent millions of years slicing through sandstone, carving a canyon with walls that rise nearly 3,000 feet straight up in places. Mormon pioneers who settled the area in the 1860s gave it the name Zion, drawing on a biblical word meaning refuge or sanctuary, and the name stuck even after the park's federal designation in 1919. The famous narrow section requires hikers to wade directly through the river itself, walking between canyon walls so close together that sunlight barely reaches the water below. Rock layers here reveal an ancient desert that once stretched across this entire region, its wind-blown dunes eventually compressing into the very stone that visitors now climb and photograph. Zion has become one of the most visited parks in the country, proof that a landscape shaped entirely by water and time can still stop people in their tracks. Glacier National Park. Montana's Glacier National Park earned its name from the massive ice sheets that carved its jagged peaks and deep valleys during the last ice age, though the glaciers themselves are now vanishing at an alarming rate. In the early 1900s, the park had over 100 glaciers. Today, fewer than 25 remain, offering scientists a rare, if troubling, window into the effects of a warming climate. The park is home to the Going to the Sun Road, a 50-mile engineering marvel that crosses the Continental Divide, offering some of the most breathtaking views in the country. Native American tribes, including the Blackfeet and Salish Kootenai, have lived in this region for thousands of years, and their cultural ties to the land remain deeply woven into the park's identity today. As the ice continues to melt, Glacier stands as both a monument to natural beauty and an urgent reminder of a changing world. Everglades National Park. Unlike most national parks, Everglades protects not a mountain or a canyon but a slow-moving river of grass that flows almost invisibly across the tip of Florida. Established in 1947, it was one of the first parks set aside specifically to protect an ecosystem rather than scenery, a shift in thinking that was ahead of its time. Roughly 1.5 million acres of marsh, mangrove, and sawgrass prairie make up the park, providing habitat for alligators, manatees, and the elusive Florida panther, one of the most endangered mammals in North America. Decades of draining and development upstream have cut the flow of fresh water reaching the Everglades by more than half, and restoring that flow has become one of the largest environmental repair efforts in American history. Few places in the country illustrate so clearly how fragile, and how worth saving, an entire living system can be. Denali National Park and Preserve. Rising 20,310 feet above the Alaskan wilderness, Denali is the tallest peak in North America, and its name, meaning the high one in the Koyukon Athabaskan language, was formally restored in 2015 after being called Mount McKinley for over a century. The mountain generates its own weather, and climbers who attempt its summit sometimes wait weeks at base camp for a single clear window to make their final push. Beyond the mountain itself, the park protects 6 million acres of tundra, forest, and glacier, threaded by a single 92-mile road that limits vehicle traffic to preserve the wilderness experience. Grizzly bears, caribou, wolves, and Dall sheep roam freely here, largely undisturbed by the kind of infrastructure found in parks farther south. In a park built around one of the most extreme mountains on the continent, the wildlife and the wildland around it prove just as unforgettable as the summit. Acadia National Park. Perched on the rocky coast of Maine, Acadia is the oldest national park east of the Mississippi River, established in 1919 largely through land donated by wealthy summer residents who wanted to protect it from development. Cadillac Mountain, standing just 1,530 feet tall, is famous for being one of the first places in the United States to see the sunrise for much of the year, drawing crowds before dawn during certain seasons. The park's carriage roads, over 45 miles of them, were built without a single motor vehicle in mind, commissioned by John D. Rockefeller Jr. specifically to be explored on foot, by bicycle, or on horseback. Granite cliffs meet the cold Atlantic here in dramatic fashion, and at spots like Thunder Hole, incoming waves compress into a narrow inlet and explode with a sound that can startle even people expecting it. Acadia proves that a national park doesn't need to be enormous to leave a permanent mark on the people who visit it. Redwood National and State Parks. Along the foggy coast of Northern California grow the tallest trees on the planet, some of them stretching over 350 feet into the sky, taller than a 30-story building. These coast redwoods can live more than 2,000 years, meaning some of the trees standing today had already been alive for centuries before Europeans ever set foot on this continent. By the time the park was established in 1968, roughly 90% of the original old-growth redwood forest in California had already been logged, and the new protections came just in time to save what remained. The coastal fog that rolls in almost daily isn't just atmospheric. The trees actually absorb moisture directly through their needles, allowing them to thrive in the dry summer months. Standing at the base of one of these giants, craning your neck and still not finding the top, tends to put a person's sense of scale into permanent perspective. Arches National Park. In the high desert of eastern Utah, more than 2,000 documented natural stone arches have formed over roughly 100 million years, the result of an ancient seabed evaporating and leaving behind thick layers of salt and sandstone. As the salt shifted underground, it pushed the rock above into domes, and wind and water slowly wore away the softer stone, leaving the stronger arches standing. Delicate Arch, the park's most recognized formation, stands 46 feet tall and has become such a well-known symbol of Utah that it appears on the state's license plates. These formations are not permanent. Smaller arches collapse every few years, a quiet reminder that the same forces that built them are still at work tearing them down. What looks like a frozen sculpture garden is, in truth, still very much a landscape in motion. Grand Teton National Park. Just south of Yellowstone, the Teton Range rises abruptly out of the valley floor with no foothills to soften the transition, a result of a fault line that has been lifting the mountains and dropping the valley for roughly 10 million years. Grand Teton itself reaches 13,775 feet, and because the range emerges so suddenly from flatland, it often appears even taller than its elevation suggests. The valley below, known as Jackson Hole, was long used by Native American tribes and later by fur trappers, whose stories and place names still linger across the region today. Establishing the park was a fight. Wealthy philanthropist John D. Rockefeller Jr. quietly purchased over 32,000 acres of the valley in the 1930s and eventually donated it to the government after years of local resistance. Few mountain ranges in the country managed to look this dramatic simply by doing nothing but standing there, and that, in the end, is exactly the point.